Evening and welcome to the November 29th, 2023 Committee of the Finance Committee meeting of the City Council. Committee members present, Councilors Boschman, Van Hazinga, Squally, and myself, Di Natale. Please be advised that FATV is conducting an audio and video recording of this meeting for public broadcast. I ask that anyone in the audience who is recording this meeting to please identify themselves for the record now by standing and stating your name and city of residence. Seeing none, at this time I ask that all electronic devices be placed into silent mode. Public comment period. I invite anyone in the audience who wishes to speak, who is not a department head or making a presentation, to please approach the podium, identify yourself by name and address, and identify the agenda item on which you would like to speak, and you may speak for not more than 2 minutes.
Jacqueline Wedgie, Fitchburg resident, 259-23. A winter warming shelter sounds good, but you should delve into the specifics. First, will this, like many other shelters in the state, be overwhelmed by migrants, leaving existing Fitchburg residents in the cold? Second, who will oversee the shelter? Earlier this year, the state pulled funding because our shelter was mismanaged. WBUR reported on numerous problems, including sexual harassment of women. One of their sources was Leominster State Representative Natalie Higgins. Will the Health Department, which is itself the subject of an unresolved sexual harassment complaint, be in charge? That's like the fox guarding the hen house. Until such time as we can clean house in the Health Department, we should either leave shelters to the state or to the private sector, or we should assign another department to oversee them, perhaps the police department's community engagement unit. Third, I find it hard to believe $10,000 will cover the cost of the shelter. What cost sharing will be required of the city?
Any other public comment? Seeing none, we will move on to the agenda. 259-23, in order that the City of Fitchburg approves the expenditure of grant funds by the Board of Health from the Community Foundation of North Central, Massachusetts in the amount of $10,000 to support an overnight winter warming center. Ms. Christensen.
Good evening, councilors. I'm here on behalf of the Health Department Outreach and Prevention Division. Just for a little background on this request. The Outreach Department has worked very closely. Last year we worked with Restoration Recovery. We received a grant, similar grant from United Way for $10,000 to put people into motels who are homeless and at risk of death or injury due to the extreme weather conditions. This was not economically feasible. We did it on 6 different occasions. We had to dip into some other funding that we received for the same purpose to the tune of about $24,000. Looking forward to this year, we've been exploring different options. What can we do to help folks so they don't die outside, that have not wanted to be placed in a shelter or receive treatment or things like that? This grant that was written to the Community Foundation, it was an organizational development grant to work on moving forward from the motel model. What can we do? In discussions with the Fitchburg Housing Authority, I'm going to give you some background on that. The Fitchburg Housing Authority now oversees what is called Opportunities for Hope. 2 months ago, Opportunities for Hope was formed out of the old, what we know as Our Father's House. The board of directors is now the board from Fitchburg Housing Authority, and there are 4 non-voting members that remain from Our Father's House. So Fitchburg Housing Authority has the authority over all of what was the Our Father's House programming. The site that we seek to use for the warming center is located at 76 Mechanic Street. It is the site of a Fitchburg Housing Authority building that has been used up until this week for a female sober living program. That funding for that program was under the original Our Father's House, and that ended when Our Father's House was shut down. Fitchburg Housing Authority has allowed the several females that are there to remain there during this period at a loss, quite a bit of a loss every month. They have made arrangements for the few women living there, that they will be transferred to another facility. So, I shouldn't say facility, another living program, sober living program in the area. So that has been made available to them. What we seek to do is work with Fitchburg Housing Authority, set up a winter warming center. This would be almost a pop-up center that would be activated only at times of extreme cold, snow, sleet, when it's needed. We've worked with many of our community partners in advice with the police department, the fire department, Fitchburg Emergency Management. We feel that we have developed a nice model moving forward to see if this works, see what can we do in the future. The $10,000 will cover minimum payment to the Fitchburg Housing Authority for use of the building. Fitchburg Housing Authority will be assuming responsibility for the staff the short periods of time that it is open. And there is an MOU circulating currently through the city that will finalize those plans that we have.
Council Bushman.
How many people from Fitchburg?
Well, the plan is that this will be open to the Fitchburg street homeless. When we do activate this, what we've done in the past and what we plan to do is our street outreach worker, police department, fire department, our other agencies that work with the homeless, we know who everyone is, we know where they are, and the plan is to get them in first. We're working with Fitchburg Housing to set a limit along with the fire department for occupancy. If there's a bed or two open, we may be able to work, if another city calls, but our plan is for this to be for the Fitchburg street homeless, and that's who we're trying to serve.
Now, you said, what happens if I'm homeless and I don't want to go into that warming center? You leave me alone?
Yep.
You do, you don't?
It's entirely voluntary. We have people that want to stay outside. We have people that have been outside for a while that we've offered shelter, treatment, whatever they may need. They don't choose to do that. We can't make anyone do anything, but we want to give the option to people that do want to come in so they don't die in the extreme cold.
And Fitchburg Housing Authority can afford this? They can afford to keep that building running down there and pay for the heat and everything else?
We have, like I said, we have the MOU circulating that they will be responsible for the operational cost. We will be reimbursing them a small amount, which would be part of this funding, but not a substantial amount. They've been a great partner with us in getting this up and running. They recognize the need. Our father's house, such as it was, is closed. Last year we were in motels. Wasn't feasible, wasn't efficient, wasn't economical, and wasn't sustainable. The smock shelter is now open in Leominster. They've been great working with us to get folks in. We're working through a list now. They do have a long waiting list for people to get in. So we're doing the best we can to get folks off the streets and safe.
Now, the house down here on Lunenburg Street, the former Fitchburg Housing, isn't that the city's property and not Fitchburg Housing?
I believe Fitchburg Housing Authority has the use of that right now.
But
Yes,
it
it
belongs to
reverted
the
to
city,
them.
according to what I read on that.
Pardon?
According to what I have read, underneath the deed, as soon as our father's house closed the doors, it reverted back to the city.
Right. It has to be used as a shelter
Now, it has to be used for a shelter?
under the terms of the deed, yes, or else it reverts back to the city. So Fitchburg Housing Authority right now has the use of that building, and oversight of that building.
All right, I yield the floor.
Council Squalia.
And the $10,000 payment to Fitchburg Housing Authority, this agreement takes us through this winter cold season.
Yes, we're not giving them an outright payment. We will only be paying them for the months we use it. We get through December, we don't use it, they will not be invoicing us.
Thank you.
Oh, one more question.
Council Bushman.
What's going to happen with the excess money? According to what I read, you have to use it for that special reason, and only that reason.
Right. The money was received from us in order to do a organizational development plan of what we're going to do every winter. So the money that is not used for this, we have several people signed up to go to a shelter management class. We're looking long-term, how can we make this work for the city? We've been in contact with a couple local municipalities that operate warming centers and how they make it work, and we're hopeful that this could be a long-term thing that we do. We need to do something to keep folks safe.
So I hope we're not saying we got a warming center, come all in from everywhere to Fitchburg, Massachusetts. We're going to take care of you.
That's not what it's going to be. Our first priority will be Fitchburg Street homeless. In the event that there's 1 or 2 beds, we also will be working with the police department, the fire department, if someone comes in.
All right.
We're not putting a sign up to welcome everyone.
Well, I just hope it's not that way, because I remember helping out one time, and I met quite a few, I shouldn't say quite a few, some people weren't even from Fitchburg. They were from the Boston area, and they were down here. So I wasn't too pleased.
Our goal is to help the people that are currently here in Fitchburg who are homeless.
All right.
Move to approve 25923.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve 259-23. Any discussion? There's no objection. I'll take this on unanimous consent. Seeing none, passes. Thank you. 260-23, order that the City of Fitchburg approves the transfer of $67,500 from Police Personal Services Professional Standard Stipend to be credited as follows: $40,000 from Police Personal Services Dispatcher Overtime, $20,000 from Police Equipment and Repair Training, and $7,500 from Police Equipment and Repair Contracted Services. Chief Martineau.
Thank you. Good evening, councilors. Mr. Chairman, this first order that's before you this evening, after reviewing our current FY operating budget, I found a need there where I have to rectify some accounts under the professional standard stipend. That gets paid out once a year in September, and because we were so short-staffed this year, there was a money left over in that account, and that's what I'm presenting to you tonight, and with your permission to move to some accounts that I'm anticipating deficits in. Specifically, moving $40,000 into our dispatch overtime account, which is running extremely low at this point. Putting another $20,000 into our training account. The $20,000 into our training account, we grossly underestimated how many vacancies we would have this year with departures, early retirements, resignations. We're anticipating hiring 10 police officers right now that we're trying to vet. And the cost of the academy is $3,200 per student. So this $20,000 will allow me, with the money I already have in there, to hire those 10 officers once we get into the next year. And the last part is the contracted services that I'm requesting to move some money into an account where we have all of our contracted services. So this is a movement of money in my account. The professional standard stipend is paid for the year. This was excess in that account, and you've seen me come before you throughout the year where I have to move money around my operating budget to sometimes rectify shortfalls. I'll be happy to answer any questions on any three of those or anything regarding this topic.
Council Bushman. Oh, I'm sorry. Councilor Zarella first.
That's right, he had his hand up.
Yeah.
I just wanted to ask, you mentioned the dispatch overtime. How are the adjustments that we made earlier in the year coming along in terms of helping with that?
It's still a huge work in progress. We have some things that we will be presenting the administration in the very near future on some ideas that I have for that dispatch room. The ideas, the things that we're looking at, I'm not ready to discuss in this open forum. The things that we're looking at do require mayoral support. Things that we've been working on at the police department for the last 2 months and trying to really explore all opportunities. That being said, I still have a responsibility to answer the 911 lines when they're coming in. And we've been so short-staffed this year, we were down to, at 1.4 dispatches out of we're budgeted for 10. I'm supposed to have 12. That's another long story, but at one point we were down to 4 dispatches, which forced me to have police officers go into that room to answer 911 calls. And obviously the rate of pay is much higher than the dispatches. It's just been one perfect storm after another. And I can assure you, Counselor, that something is coming in the next 30 to 45 days. And like I said, this is going to have to be a conversation I have with the incoming administration on what the future of 911 communications look like in the city of Fitchburg. I know, Councilor Boschman, you're very passionate about this. I can assure you I adhere to your advice, and I've been working diligently because I'm as frustrated as you are. But this transfer right now is necessary, just because my overtime budget and dispatch is now under $10,000, and it won't sustain 2 more payrolls. So fortunately, we have money within the budget that I can move around. This will sustain us until we make that next move, and then we go from there. That's about where I'm at on dispatch right now.
All right, thank you. And please don't misunderstand. I'm not trying to ask and say, well, you know, we did this thing you asked. Why hasn't it fixed the problem? I just wanted to know what the status was, whether it was helping at all, and how it's worked out.
It's been a work in progress. Right now, I still have 2 police officers assigned to the dispatch room full time. The bare minimum that I can have is 9 dispatches, and currently I have 7. So that means 2 police officers are in there. I anticipate those 2 police officers to be out of there in the next week or 2, which will get me back to 9 civilians. So I anticipate the overtime will slow down significantly once I have 9 civilians in there. But even with 9, anytime they take a day off, it's going to create overtime. So my optimum number in that room is 12. With 12 dispatchers in that room, 12 dispatchers handling our call volume, that is probably the optimum number to minimize overtime and to provide the services that are required in a city this size.
All right, thank you.
Before I go to Councilman Chief, I mean, but the issue is not a budget issue, right? You have 4 on staff.
Historically, if you go back, let's say 4 budgets, I've always been funded for up to 12 dispatches. This year, for some reason, it says 12 in the operating budget. I'm actually funded for 10. And I think that was done because historically I've never had more than 10 dispatches. But the real number is I need 12 dispatches in there. I'm budgeted for 10. It's never been a money issue, Counselor. I think that's what you're asking me.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's like the DPW. You're funded for a certain amount of positions. The issue is getting the positions filled. So while you need 12, or let's say you needed 10, you can only get right now 4. So that's where I'm going with this, is that it's not a budget issue per se. To me, if you were fully staffed at 10 consistently and you needed those extra 2, that's a different discussion. But I guess my point is, like the other departments, let's get the positions filled in order to better. Where am I going with this? What I'm trying to say is you're funded for 10. Let's say you were funded for 12, but you can only staff 4 for whatever reason. I mean, the issue to me is getting people in there more than it is getting those extra 2.
Oh, most certainly
Okay.
is. But I want to make it clear. This whole topic of dispatch goes far beyond budgeting. It is so many moving parts that go with this operation within my department, which I will have very lengthy, concise discussions with the next administration on this. I think we have a good proposal that we're going to present her with, but that, like I said, this needs mayoral support, not council support, but mayoral support. I'm going to present it, hopefully, and we're going to make some decisions. But I can tell you right now, I can't continue status quo, what I'm doing in dispatch. I'll give one piece of advice, one fact. In the last 36 months, I've hired over 35 dispatchers. The average tenure of my dispatcher is less than a year. That turnover rate it's not sustainable. So There's a lot of contributing factors, ones that I'm looking forward to discuss in greater length and give possibly options to. But before you tonight, it's very simple. If I don't move this $40,000, I'm not going to be paying my dispatchers overtime to make sure that someone's answering the phone when 911 calls. So I can assure you that this is a work in progress and one that I've put a considerable amount of time in the last 6 months.
Council Bushman?
Well, I can't ask questions, she told me to keep my mouth shut, so I'll wait. I'll let him talk to the mayor first, the new mayor in January.
With all due respect, I didn't tell you not to ask me questions, Council.
Well, he's going to ask the questions on the $40,000, so.
Please do. I mean,
Well, you just told me you're working on something and you can't go into details, so that's.
What I'm working on is a program that is between us and the appointing authority of the mayor of the city of Fitchburg. It would be premature for me to discuss this in this type of forum.
Right.
It would be disrespecting the office of the mayor.
Right now, there is an immediate need, irrespective of what the plan is in the next 30 to 40 days. There's an immediate need now. So
Yeah,
to me,
I'm
they're
not
two
gonna-
separate matters.
I'm not going to deny that,
Okay,
I
yeah,
understand that.
Yeah, that's fine, just,
I think he knows where I was going.
yeah, I'm sure at the time.
I know
when-
exactly, yeah.
When the chief presents his plan through the mayor's office, we'll have a whole other discussion about that plan at that time. That's more an appropriate avenue.
Okay, I got no problem with that.
Yep.
Move to approve 26023.
Second?
Motion made and seconded to approve 26023. Any objections to the motion? Seeing none, it passes. Next, 26123, in order that the City of Fitchburg approves the expenditure of supplemental funds from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Executive Office of Public Safety and Security State 911 Department Support and Incentive Grant in the approximate amount of $14,842 for the purpose of purchasing a new recorder for the police department. Chief Martineau.
Thank you. The next three are all grants. We're very well aware of how fortunate I am to have such a talented grant writer on staff and the amount of money that she brings into the city of Fitchburg on a yearly basis. I think we're managing close to $1.7 million in grants on a yearly basis. That is $1.7 million that the taxpayers aren't funding for the police department. This one is tied to dispatch, and I'm sure that Councilor Boschman may have a question on it. So this $14,000, we became made aware that by law we have to record incoming phone calls. All incoming phone calls, whether they're on business line, 911 line, they're recorded and they're held for a duration. Our recording system is now outdated and will be dysfunctional in the next 3 months. 911 told us you need to get this. So I presented some of the plans that I have for our dispatch room, and they said, you're going to need this no matter what you do at the police department because you still have to maintain copies of all incoming calls to the police department. So that being said, I didn't have $14,000 kicking in the back room. I asked Christy to write a grant to go back to the well at 911. We've gone back to the well with our 911 partners 3 times this year. We started out roughly at $186,000 grant. She wrote another grant. We were up to $220,000. And I said to her, I said, can you try one more time? It's only 14 grand, but it's 14 grand I don't have to ask the city for. We were awarded the $14,000 grant. This $14,000 will bring in a brand new recording system into the police department. No matter what happens to my communication room, I need this. So this is $14,000 that taxpayers don't have to pay.
Motion to approve?
I'll second that.
Motion made and seconded to approve 26123. Any objections? Seeing none, passes. 26223, order that the City of Fitchburg approves the expenditure of funds from the Department of Justice Office of Community-Oriented Policing Services grant in the approximate amount of $114,816 for the purpose of advancing the practice of community policing through support of the Police Department Accreditation Program. Chief Martineau.
Thank you. This one is extremely near and dear to me. We've been working on this for the last, a goal of mine nine and a half years ago when I took the job was to get the Fitchburg Police Department to a certification accreditation status. And what that means is once you're certified or accredited, you are now adhering to the gold standards of policing across the country. Standards that are set forth by the International Chiefs Association, standards that are set by the Police Executive Research Forum, and that is called accreditation. Accreditation is the gold standard. That means that your department is adhering to the greatest standards of policies for their community, that we are providing the greatest policies and standards for the community that we serve. Since 2020, when we went through a lot of the unrest that we went through, there was a big push on more and more departments wanting to get accredited and certified. At some point, I'm confident that it will be a requirement by the Post Commission in Boston that will say that your agency needs to have accreditation status or you will not be eligible for grant funds. I can see that day coming. Accreditation in itself is a full-time job to get all your policies, to review your policies. I have in excess of 356 policies within the police department. We have policies that cover everything from appearance to attire to vehicles to conduct. They're vast, and our policies are what we live and die by. Our policies are who we are. Our policies create us to be a transparent police department. Those policies, each one of them needs to be individually reviewed and brought up to a greater standard that the Mass Accreditation Department requires. To do that, I would need another 2 police officers or another 2 employees doing this on a full-time basis. I asked Christy to explore grants a couple of years ago. She got me a part-time accreditation grant that this council approved 2 years ago, and that was coming to the end this January. I would say we're about 3/4 of the way there before I can present to the city that the Fitchburg Police Department is an accredited police department. To get me across that line, we need to continue with our accreditation. I asked Christy to write a grant specific to that need, and we were awarded. We were one of very few in the state that were awarded this significant grant of $114,000. This will allow me to continue with 2 contracted experts on accreditation matters. They're not police officers. They're not employees of the city of Fitchburg. They are contracted services. They're experts in the field of accreditation on how to draft your policies that will live up to the standards of the International Association of Chiefs of Police. Once we earn this title, we will be one of the elites in the state. I believe there's only 80 communities that have accreditation status. I'm estimating that number, so please don't hold me to the exact 80, but it's not a lot. And there's a push across the state to have everybody become either certified or accredited police department. With the approval tonight, this is going to get me the next 2 years. This will get the Fitchburg Police Department across the line and into the end zone to get that coveted status as an accredited police department. And once we're there, that's something to really be proud of and to look at us as the gold standard in policing. So with your support this evening, I hope you can approve this one.
Motion to approve? Oh, I withdraw my motion.
Council Bushman.
Got a question, Chief. Not to be a wise guy. Are you planning on being around for the next 2 years and after?
I'm not going to discuss my personal longevity in the Fitchburg. I've given the city 37 years of my life, and when it's time for me to move on, I will make sure that the mayor's office is the first to be made aware, but I'm not going to discuss it in an open forum this evening.
Well, the only reason why I asked that question is because, I'm going to support it, but what happens when the next guy that comes after you says, I don't want to do this at all?
Anybody sitting in my seat would be a fool not to have an accredited police department. For the last 9 years, I've worked diligently on executive development, and I know the leadership team at the police department that will hopefully one day take over when I decide to retire, and they know the value of accreditation. I've said it a few times, this is the gold standard. This is a big deal in the policing world to be called an accredited police department. So I have every hope that my predecessor will see the same value in it as I do.
All right. Good enough for me.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve 26223. Any objections? It passes. 26323, order that the City of Fitchburg hereby approves the expenditure of grant funds from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Executive Office of Public Safety and Security, Office of Grants and Research, and the approximate amount of $30,470 for a municipal road safety program to enhance traffic and pedestrian safety through high-visibility police patrols and occupant protection mobilizations. Chief Martineau.
Thank you. This is one of those grants that I've presented to the City Council Finance 9 years in a row now. I hate to say this is one of those ground ball grants because this goes to every community, but quite frankly, you got to apply to get them, and we apply for everything that we can apply for. This traffic safety grant in previous years, and we will continue to do so this year with your approval, we cover all overtime expenses associated with traffic mobilizations. There's only so much my officers working patrol shifts can do relative to speeding complaints or anything traffic related because they're responding to 70 calls a night for service. So we augment that through other means. We look for grants like this and we bring in overtime, and then we hire police officers on overtime at no expense to the city but through grants, and we can do additional, more stepped up enforcement. So with this money, previous years we've done ticket campaigns. We do drive sober campaigns. We get distracted driving campaigns. We concentrate on whatever the data is telling us. You've heard me talk about data-driven police departments and data-driven how we approach things. We review the data, and if I see we have an exorbitant amount of accidents in one area, we will do these deployments in that area. So these funds are a great way for us to augment services to the city. One thing I do like to say, because it gets questions, you've seen the amount of safety equipment I give out each and every year. We give out, I want to say, hundreds of bicycle helmets every year to kids in our community that just, may not have the opportunity to get a helmet. We buy a ton of helmets with this money as well. We allocate a lot of money out of this grant to get those helmets. So at different events throughout the year, when you see my offices handing out helmets, we've bought car seats through this. This is all grant funded, and we're able to get these funds and give it back to the community. Like I said, this is one of those ground ball grants, but boy, we do get a big bang for our buck out of this, and hopefully you can approve it again this evening.
Council Boschman.
Got a question. I got a couple of questions on this grant.
Sure.
My couple of questions are this. I understand what you're trying to do, but sometimes I think, this is me, that we're kind of like hypocrites. We're passing out helmets to protect the kids from getting hurt. But yet, the kids are not wearing helmets. And I think under the mass law, if you're 16 and younger, you're supposed to have a helmet on, if I'm not mistaken. That's one of my biggest gripes, and I see it constantly throughout the city when I drive around. My second gripe is people crossing wherever they want to cross at any given time. The other day at 5 o'clock in the morning, I almost hit somebody because he crossed right in front, and I didn't see him. It was dark in the area. Didn't even see him. He had dark clothes on, and I came close. I almost like just close to him. And I said, "Oh my God!" And he wasn't in a crosswalk. He just crossed. Those are the big hang-ups I get: is the helmets and people crossing wherever they want. They don't use the crosswalks and that. But you'll stop a guy for not stopping for a person trying to cross the street. But yet nothing happens to the person that's jaywalking or the kid that's not wearing his helmet, and we're trying to protect us from getting hurt or having brain damage. Because it does happen, if I'm not mistaken.
I can't dispute anything you're saying. Everything you're saying has some legitimacy to it. What I can say to you is I have limited funds. That's why we go after these grants. And once I get limited funds, I look at what the greatest need is for the community. You're 100% correct. There is people just walking wherever they want, and sometimes they are impeding traffic. We do address that. As far as children not wearing helmets, it's our job to educate. I'm not going out there and writing tickets to a 6-year-old not having a helmet. My job is to educate them and their parents about the importance, and that's why we utilize the hundreds of helmets that we get and really try to emphasize the importance behind it. So when you see funds like this, I utilize the funds to the greatest need of what's happening at any given time in the community. And that's where our data-driven response comes into play. You will see deployments out there, and if you see deployments out there, they're in an area that dictate that type of response. These funds don't go that far. When you're talking $30,000, you're not getting 12 months of services out of that. So I need to spread it out. You know, we right out of the gate, we're going to be out there on New Year's Eve with additional patrols out there on New Year's Eve, obviously looking for impaired driving. So we do our best on the data that we're given. I'm not disputing that you're making some valid points, and I appreciate you bringing them up. And those are also looked at. But funds like this go to the greatest needs in the community.
All right. I was going to say something, but because the only reason why I bring it up, because I tell my grandkids all the time, put your helmet on. I get really, really upset. And you know, even if folks, I tell my kids the same thing, and they tell the kids, but you know how kids are. We all don't want to listen when we're that age.
That's why we have hard conversations with parents and grandparents about educating them to do their job to really illustrate to their children how important those are. So.
And my final question to you, you know, I thought about it because my mind, it slipped my mind. The big complaint this year in my ward, and I don't know, probably in a vast majority of the wards, are these kids with dirt bikes, unregistered dirt bikes, flying up and down the streets. Flying, I mean, not driving, flying.
Counselor, where are you going with this line of questioning?
Well, it's probably safety.
But it's a grant for enforcement of these efforts with respect to safety and traffic. We're going to get into the weeds now of how the police are attacking these things and everything.
I appreciate your concerns on the motorized bikes, and I would talk to you anytime offline. You're always welcome in my office, and I can give you an idea of the initiatives that we have taken to combat that problem as well.
All right. Okay, Mr. Chair, I surrender.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve 26323. Any objections? It's approved.
Thank you for your support.
26423, order that the City of Fitchburg hereby approves the expenditure of funds from the Massachusetts DOT Aeronautics Grant for Environmental and Wildlife Hazard Assessments in the approximate amount of $10,956.75. This grant will complement the $256,491 previously awarded and is in line with the airport master plan in conjunction with FAA requirements. Just to emphasize that sentence, that this grant will complement a grant that was already awarded. So you've already been before us to discuss the totality of this, so this should not be any surprise what we are seeing tonight for acceptance.
Excellent. Can I sit down?
Mr. Kettle, manager of the airport, if you would like to make any comments, please do.
Well, first of all, Chair Di Natale, City Councillors, thank you again for the opportunity to speak. It is a formality, and it all emanates from the Airport Master Plan and then to the Capital Improvement Plan, the CIP plan, which is reviewed every single year. And this was actually included in the budget. I put it into the budget for this fiscal year. And we are ahead of the budget at the moment, so it's already accounted for, so I don't have any problems with paying the bill. So I request you to approve the $10,956.75 grant, basically.
I make a motion we accept. Now, pay close attention.
Motion made and seconded to accept the grant. Any discussion? If there are no objections, it is passed.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you.
26523, order that the City of Fitchburg hereby approves the expenditure of grant funds awarded by the Stanton Foundation in the amount of $33,501 for the capital improvements and upgrades to the City of Fitchburg Dog Park. This capital improvement grant will cover the cost of new exercise equipment, signage, storage, and other materials for the park. Director Bunnell.
Thank you for having me, councilors, tonight. I'm here before you to request the approval of what you just read. This foundation is a private organization, and this is where, before my time here in the city of Fitchburg, this is the foundation that provided a very large amounts to get the dog park up and going. After attending a conference, I found out that the dog park portion of the foundation is, their funds are going to be dissolving within a couple of years, and if you were already awarded an original grant to set up and establish a dog park, you could go back 2 or 4 years after the fact. With ours, it was a little longer, to go back and reapply for additional funding for things that, after the dog park's all set up, you know, usually when you build something, you're like, oh, I wish I would have added that, or I didn't think of that originally. So you could go back and apply for a set amount. Our set amount was $33,501. I reached out to the president of the Dog Park Association and talked to her about what the dog park may need, whether it's additions or different equipment, things that might have been missed. And we put together a list, and I applied, and they sent me a check.
Council Squalia.
Thank you. I am the president of the Friends of Fitchburg Dogs that helps maintain the City of Fitchburg Dog Park, and I've previously filed a disclosure with the city clerk just to add that information. And I really appreciate James's work applying for this maintenance grant, and any improvements that we can make to the dog park are greatly appreciated by hundreds and hundreds of dogs every month. Thank you.
Move to accept?
Second.
Motion made and seconded to accept the grant order. Any objections? It's unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you guys very much.
Thank you, James.
Lastly, 26923, a petition from Jacqueline Poirier, Cemetery Superintendent, to approve the enclosed price increases as approved by the cemetery trustees at the October 19th, 2023 board meeting. Ms. Poirier. Oh, and the fees are included in your packets, or should be anyway. If there is no objection, I won't read every fee on the schedule, but for any questions about it, it's in our packets and free to share to the public. Is there any comments you'd like to make, Ms. Poirier?
Thank you. I just wanted to give you a little general history of how we go about doing price increases within the cemetery. It's done in conjunction with the board. We do a cost analysis of what is happening locally. What is it going to cost us as far as labor, backhoe, trucks? What is the actual cost of doing the services that we are providing? In 2007, 2010, 2012, we did not raise the price of the graves. There were some adjustments. We added some services. So we came in front of you as we changed the price sheet. In 2018, when we did the cost analysis, we increased the graves by $400. And we adjusted the opening charges, not that drastic, but we did adjust them. In 2021, we came back again. At that point, we wanted to keep the cost as low as we could for the residents and everyone going through COVID and losing their jobs. So the board and myself was very conscious not to raise the price of graves. We did need to raise the cost of the openings and some of the services that we bring to the clients. So in 2021, that was the last time we came before the board to raise the prices. And again, it was not on the graves. It was only on the openings, trying to discourage the overtime on Saturdays and Sundays. So we raised those prices, but that is all we did. So we did another cost analysis, and we were very under with our graves and our openings with the industry standards that's out there at this point. So the prices that you see You see the increases with the grave cost at this point. And the openings, we were way below industry standards on our opening costs, so those were adjusted as well. The cost, when we increased the frost fee, our propane costs have gone up, our labor costs have gone up, and we have to stay right beside that grave as it's burning. So, any questions?
When was the last time these were updated? Not the ones that we updated previously, but the ones that specifically we're changing here. You said it's 20 when?
2018,
2018.
correct.
All right, and the analysis done was what? A comparison to other communities, what they charge for burials, openings?
Yes.
Okay.
So there was a comparison with other communities. There was also a cost comparison of my labor cost and the time allotted to do each specific task and what we needed to charge to cover that.
So I have firsthand knowledge of what goes into this process. I worked at the cemetery for 4 years. There's a lot involved that, like many things that people take for granted, the background of what takes place when there is a burial at a public cemetery, the amount of people that are required from the city side to supervise the burial, conduct the burial, and all the preparation work, and then the maintenance after that. So the fact that we are keeping pace with industry standards should be what we strive to do in every department. And also, as we see everywhere else, costs of doing business is going up everywhere, and we have to keep pace, or else it comes out of the taxpayer end more and more, because a portion of the cemetery department is funded by the opening costs. It's in our budget every year. I believe $40,000 is what the cemetery revenues provide to cover expenses from the cemetery expenses. There's always a line item in the budget for less opening costs, they call it. So the mayor's current and past would use some of that opening cost to subsidize the cemetery's operations. So with the cemetery costs going up, it would only be natural and feasible to keep pace with the fees as well. And so, and we only have one cemetery currently that's active, right, that we're physically burying people
Correct.
at. It's Forest Hill.
Right.
And I know there was comments made in the past about upkeep of the mausoleum and upkeep of certain areas. And, this is one of those avenues in order to keep ourselves honest with what things are costing and what we should be charging. So as long as we're not exceeding ourselves tremendously, which I know we're not, I don't have any problem with this. I think these reviews should be conducted every few years. But we certainly have seen an increase in labor costs in the Department of Public Works. And the costs in general are exploding everywhere, as we know. So the longer we wait to adjust these rates and bring them up to industry standards, we're only doing a disservice to the taxpayers at large, who would then have to subsidize what we're not covering through the cemetery charges. So I am in support of this, and I urge everybody else to support this as well. Any questions? Councilor Van Huizinga?
Just to briefly add, looking at what we spent to enlarge Forest Hill Cemetery, and we're going to have to go across the street at some point in the future, and the cost that we're going to have to pay to fix the mausoleum are substantial. So death is expensive, and maintaining these cemeteries is expensive. And I think I want to thank you for doing the rate study and coming forward with a new rate schedule, because we need to make sure we're adequately funded here. So thank you very much. I support it.
Thank you.
Move to approve 269.
One question.
Councilor,
On perpetual care,
do you withdraw?
Yep.
Motion? No, go ahead. Councilor Bushman.
on the care, perpetual care, is that $700 a year, or is that lifetime?
It's a one-time cost,
One-time cost?
yes.
That's
And the perpetual cares by state law go into a separate account. We do not touch the principal. We are only allowed to touch the interest, and that's controlled by the trustees.
Oh, so it goes into a different fund.
Yes, correct.
So does that take care of all the cemeteries that we have? that's potential care, like we got one over off of Laurel Street there on the hill?
Yes, and all of our cemeteries, mainly the older ones, they did not pay perpetual care. They would go with their families and cut the grass, and there's even places at Forest Hill that will say no care on it. And we still are obligated to take care of them.
No, I was just wondering, because I bring up, like he said, we got to spend about $4 million on that mausoleum, and geez, it's not bad if you only paid $300 200 years ago, 100 years ago, and you get all this services. I didn't think that was enough. And today, I don't know, I look around, people are not going to be buried that much longer. I think they're taking their ashes and spreading them around, just throwing them out into,
The industry is changing. It is.
And I read the new thing coming in with the graves. What's that thing? Instead of being, it was in the paper, a new way of doing things. You see that one there in the paper? It was a new way of doing it. Instead of burying people with all kinds of chemicals, this natural way or something.
Green burial.
Huh?
Green burial.
Yeah, we don't have the space for green burials.
We don't.
It is your first question about perpetual care being a one-time charge. It's hard for a lot of people to understand that we would charge only a one-time fee. I mean, if the individuals are buried there for, well, forever, obviously, whatever the cemetery charges, let's be realistic, does not cover the cost of truly to maintain those graves.
Not in perpetuity, no.
No, but that's what I'm saying. So if the grave is there for 100 years, $700 is not going to cover it.
No.
So when it comes to rates in this department, I never shy away from it because there are arguments that can be made from the public that it should be an annual fee, but then I know that would be an administrative nightmare, or it would be complicated. Well, let me ask you, is it a law that we can only charge a one-time fee?
No.
It's not. So other communities, some communities may charge an annual maintenance fee?
I would have to look into other public cemeteries to see their process. I know a lot of times in a lot of foreign countries, they potentially like rent the grave for 20 years. And at the end of that time, they exhume the body and cremate it. It's a rental for 20 years.
I would just be interested to know if the industry does allow for, and is fairly common, a maintenance fee yearly. Not saying that I would support that being implemented here. It always interested me because as a former employee there and getting these rate increases, those questions always come up about a one-time fee for indefinite care. And that immediately signals to a lot of people that what you're paying, while it may be expensive up front, is nowhere near the cost that is covered to maintain not just the grave site, but the entire cemetery at large, because those individual graves are impacted by what happens around the entire cemetery. So I never looked at it as it's just to take care of that one grave. It's to take care of the whole cemetery. And so it would just be interesting to know how frequent it is elsewhere that they charge annual maintenance fees and what goes into that. You know, what kind of an administrative task is that? And because I'm sure there's issues with, collections and on-time payments and all that stuff. And then what do you do if they don't pay? You obviously can't rectify the issue by removing the burial. So
Right.
I'm sure there's a lot to it, but I just curious for my own edification.
Right, so our current deeds and that were issued before and our license of burials, it kind of spells out everything. So if we were going to look into this for futuristic, it might be potentially when we expand the cemetery, if we, I certainly can get that information.
Gotcha. Councilor Zarella?
No, I was just going to make a motion
okay.
to accept.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve 26923. If there are no objections, it is passed under
Thank
unanimous
you.
consent. Thank you.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
Motion made and seconded to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
You're adjourned. Thank you.